Hey, Brian, welcome back to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, Lacey, great to see you, and thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you. I'm very excited about this topic because I think I agree with you that not a lot of people know about it. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Something that most people have never heard of is the VA's Beneficiary Financial Counseling Service. And I wanted you to kind of explain to everybody what it is and who it's for and maybe why you are keenly aware of it.
Yeah, big picture, it's free financial planning with subject to some limitations for recipients of SGLI and VGLI. And the specifics are that when say a survivor, often a spouse, but not always, receives SGLI, then they are eligible for up to 40 hours of financial planning from a fee-only fiduciary CFP, and they have to complete that within 2 years of the receipt of the SGLI. I've been affiliated with a program that is a contractor for the VA for this for 5+ years now. And it's a great program. You can imagine like free is everyone's favorite price. And working with an hourly feeling advisor, really limits conflicts of interest. And of course, the survivor doesn't have to pay anything. But the worst part of the program is no one knows about it. And so that's kind of why I'm here to grind on this axe a little bit, is because I continue to be dumbfounded by how hidden this program is, which leads to it being underutilized. And gosh, who would we not like? Who else would we want to serve but survivors? And like we're kind of blowing it as a DoD VA enterprise.
Yes, I totally agree because I had been a financial counselor coach for years before I even knew it was a program. So I think somebody that's working in the space that
Yeah.
wasn't even aware of it. So how does the process work? Is this part of the death notification and like your casualty assistance officer? Are they the person that's supposed to tell you about it, or is it just like you're supposed to figure it out?
Yeah, so according to the point of contact for the HR services that the VA contracts with for this, essentially kind of step one is someone files the VGLI or SGLI claim. It's usually the beneficiary, but it could be someone helping them file that claim. The VA will do verification that there's actually, a valid claim, and then they're going to send out an explanation of benefits along with a claim number. That's going to go, my understanding is, both to the person who, the survivor, but then also to the contract company. I'm going to throw their name out because otherwise I'll refer to them at some point, not having explained it. But the HR services firm that the VA contracts this program through is called CompPsych, COMP, geez, however you spell psych, Psych, right? Uh, I was told there would be no spelling. But anyway, so the VA sends out a notification to both the survivor and CompPsych. Um, but the VA doesn't create a connection from the survivor to CompPsych. They have CompPsych reach out to the survivor. There's often a chunky bureaucratic delay of months between when the person passes away and when CompPsych even knows about it to be able to reach out to the survivor. And then at that point, hopefully things move faster because CompSci can basically say to the survivor, "Hey, you're eligible for this benefit. Here's what it looks like. Would you like us to connect you with someone?" And if the survivor says, "Yeah, please do," then CompSci tries to find again, a feeling financial advisor that does hourly planning, which is another kind of glitch to the system. Tries to find one typically in their area, but if they can't, then they'll try to connect them with someone remote. So in my case, when I get notified, that I reach out to that person and ask them if they'd like to have a conversation. There's no forcing them to take the benefit. There's a lot of slipping through the cracks that occurs because, especially if months go by from the time that we lose our loved one to the time we even find out that there's a benefit, there's a lot of opportunity for the less savory actors in the financial space to get a foot in the door and start slinging inappropriate products and otherwise, having people do bad things with the money. My very first client in this program came to me and loaded up with annuities. Fortunately, some of it was inside of a Roth IRA, which normally I throw up in my mouth when I hear about that in the first place, but at least we were able to surrender it at the end of the surrender period, and such. But yeah, so the problem is just like mortuary affairs offices that $100 that you probably have like one in the entire enterprise that has a person that knows about this. the installation personal financial counselors. Every year at MilMoneyCon, and then of course in our various networks, I continually find folks who should know about this, like Ziders and Magellan or whoever runs that contract. This should be like front and center, must do, no fail mission that we know about this and get the word out. And I, again, it's not their fault, but they don't know about it, so they can't be a responder there. Of course, commanders, service members, no one knows about it. And so it's just, there's all of these broken links in the chain, if you will, between that survivor and this benefit. So I'll pause there. So what questions you have, but I think it's
Yeah.
a mess.
No, so not to, just to kind of get the, I don't know, make it, clear. Not that it wasn't clear, I'm sorry, to just pull it out there.
Yeah, yeah. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. No,
Ryan, you
I was
talked for
gonna,
a long time.
I'm
Let's
sorry.
choke that up.
No, I'm sorry. I was gonna to kind of call it back. Would you say that CompPsych is where a lot of that's the failure in the chain of events there, is like they're not reaching out in a timely manner, or the survivor, it's just that's on the long list of things they have to handle in a horrible situation?
Yeah, no, my best understanding is the breakdown probably starts with the VA's process for reaching out to the survivor with haste that, hey, you're eligible for this. We highly recommend that you don't make any big financial decisions. And ideally, that should be like within 1 to 2 weeks max, I would think, after a loss. The VA should let the survivor know. And really, there ought to be simultaneous notification to CompPsych so that CompPsych can start finding someone who's in the area that would be a good fit, so that within 1 to 2 weeks of loss, there should be a contact of, not only are we here to tell you about this benefit, here's a person that you can talk to start with all the initial money questions. But I think, to answer your question, the breakdown appears to be that the VA doesn't reach out to the survivor very quickly. It also doesn't go through their verification processes. That delays the notification to CompPsych, which delays the notification back to the survivor of, hey, we found you someone. And then a contributing factor to this is the lack of knowledge in the other touch points when there's a loss. I was at the house of a survivor a couple of years back, within 24 hours of the loss. There's mortuary affairs there. There's other folks from the installation services that were walking her through the various things that were coming down their way. Not one of them had a clue that this program existed. I was the only person who knew it existed. And so there's breakdowns all over the place. And then so one of the reasons why I recently got kind of hot under the collar about this is because I got connected to someone who was really frustrated, because she's like, hey, my spouse died in November, and I got an outreach in February from VA, and then right after that CompPsych. But then there was a further delay in a phone call from the advisor, and now like someone else came along and offered me services, and I was just tired and frustrated, and I wanted to move out. So now I'm paying for services that I could have gotten for free, and I was like, gosh, we got to do better than this.
Yes, that is a long time. I would think it would come with. I would think that there would be multiple points that you have to be repetitive in the messaging, like, hey,
Yeah,
here, you're receiving the money now, heads up, this is what's next. You have this benefit if you want, because I get it, some people might have a financial advisor already and they're like, hey,
yeah,
I do not want this free service,
yeah.
I'm already with somebody. But I would say that would probably be the not the
Exception.
majority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So because it sounds to me somewhat like the VA's community care. So if you're not, for whatever reason, the VA refers you out medically, you're going into the community, and there's a lot of coordination there. Like, they are finding somebody that's in their network, they are reaching out to them, they're reaching out to you to say, hey, this is the person. So there's all this back and forth. And I think more touch points could be more places to drop the ball.
yeah, yeah.
So to me, it's like many people should know it, especially first off the casualty assistance officer. Like, that should be like, hey, these are, and again, in that situation, they have a lot of stuff to cover. But how long is the casualty assistance officer working with them? Do you know?
I mean, I think that's probably going to be variable, but in the instance that I have the most familiarity with, I guess there's two. I would say that there was a period of fairly intense contact for a couple weeks, slightly less intense contact for, call it, maybe 2 to 3 months after, and then probably very little except for maybe one-off conversations about hanging chads and such. But I think the contact is intense up front, and then as the new normal sets in, the survivors often relying on either a liaison from the unit if they have one, or shifting over to family and things like that. But that's probably because more of the benefits are starting to flow. They're getting hopefully DIC payments if they're eligible, things of that nature.
But I would think in those less intense periods, that would be is like, hey, okay, now we got to start to talk about, and I'm sure that is, there's a hierarchy of things that have to be discussed, and they're not laying it all on them the first day. It kind of comes in waves. So, but in that period, like you mentioned earlier, people getting into annuities, what are some of the other predatory things that are happening to survivors or the beneficiaries of the SGLI or the VGLI in the interim?
Yeah, so two come to mind. The first one would be just encouraging anyone to make large financial decisions in the wake of a grief-inducing event is, I think, is almost universally bad practice. I mean, you might come up against something that's truly time sensitive. I've yeah, I think it's accepted as general wisdom that when we're experiencing grief and other trauma, don't make big financial decisions that you don't have to make. Let plenty of time, get back, let dust settle, let the fog clear, or get clear-eyed again. So I think anyone that comes along and encourages anything other than, hey, let's breathe through our nose, let's triage, and let's evaluate options and goals, and let's let the clock spin a bit before we start thinking about things. So that's one issue. The other one would be the HARD Act. So as a reminder for listeners, the HARD Act is the update to the law, gosh, I think 2009, that allows recipients of VGLI, SGLI, and the TSGLI to be able to take the proceeds from that insurance payout and put that into, you can do more than a Roth IRA, but the big deal is you can put that money into a Roth IRA. So you can imagine, and you can actually put the abominably named death gratuity in there too. So in today's dollars, SGLI recipient could be putting $600,000 into an IRA all at once. Well, anyone that doesn't mention that and really thoroughly explore what a life-changing event it would be, even to do a large fraction of that amount, I think that's another, if not predatory, just absolutely like negligent issue. And again, if you're a standard mutual insurance type person is the first on scene, that doesn't benefit them to have that happen. It's not a great way to sell products. If it's someone who doesn't know about military affairs, like they're probably not even going to know to recommend that. So I think those would be the two big ones: is just encouraging fast decisions and then missing or not emphasizing the huge benefit of the HARD Act transfer to Roth IRA.
What do you think about the role of service members in all of this, making their families aware? Because I mean, I know I'm from a weird like military family, but I mean, my father taught us like how, and I think kind of at a different time of day or, service, but we were told like how a death notification works. So we would never be confused. Like, and one big thing was like there would always be two people. That was one thing that my dad drove home, and then also to like learned as a military spouse, because people do prey on, especially when they know basically a whole brigade is deployed. There's a lot of people home alone, those type of things. But this is something that I don't even know service members know about.
Yeah, I mean, in the Military Financial Advisor Association, who I would consider like the elite of military focused financial advisors, as we bring on new folks, I'm always finding people who didn't know about it, and it's not like their fault. It is very much an obscure thing. When I first heard about the program, I found out about it because as I was entering the career field, I stumbled upon a firm that basically created its business out of this service, and it used to be that this service was unlimited. So it wasn't 2 years and 40 hours. It was unlimited years and unlimited hours. And so this business basically just hoovered up as many of those folks as possible. And I think they were still operating under the fiduciary standard. I don't think anything was below board. But that was how I stumbled into knowing about it. And so then when they mentioned it, I was trying to Google it, and I found there's like one mention of it, and the way that they discussed it was not the actual title of the program. So I'm flopping around on Google just trying random financial-esque words to find this thing on the VA website. I finally do. It's a VA beneficiary financial counseling service. But even then, it says, okay, there's the program is VA financial service, but then they start using the term financial point, which financial point, they describe it as an independent company. Financial Point, to my understanding, is actually an umbrella name for HR services that's currently provided by CompSci. So it's layers of stupid confusion where it's not needed. It should just be, hey, free financial planning for survivors. It's called Beneficiary Financial Counseling Service. I don't think anyone cares how the sausage is made under that, but it's it's really confusing. And if you go onto the website, I think the other day when I was clicking around it, it had a bunch of dead links, and I don't know if they got dosed or whatever. Whatever. I mean, I think the websites have issues from time to time, but there's just not a lot of robust information about it. So even on the VA's own website, it's the cookie crumbs are not awesome. In fact, I just clicked on the financialpoint.com or whatever. Financialpointplus.com is the link that they have on there, and it goes to a 404 not found. So
Yes.
it's a neglected VA benefit, I would say.
Yes, and I actually, in preparation for this show, looked around and it was very limited and not as smooth flowing as you would think it might be, especially because, you're already dealing with people that are very stressed and have a lot going on, and maybe it should be a little easier, which leads me to my next question. What would you change about the system or how it works? How would you fix this if you could?
Yeah, I think the two most impactful things would be that I think the VA should be required to contact the survivor within a very short suspense, probably like ideally 1 week, 2 weeks maximum, make contact with the survivor and say, even if you just say, hey, we're still verifying your eligibility, but if you are eligible, you need to know about this program, and like get that connectivity between CompPsych and the VA and the survivor as fast as possible. So if I had a magic wand, I think that's probably the first place I'd use it. The second one would be I think that as long as we're going to have installation personal finance counselors, I think they need to universally know about this. It shouldn't be rocket surgery to have the DoD contract and whatever training. Like I've always had the impression that Ziders and Magellan were pretty dialed in about what they do and don't talk about. This seems like a low-hanging fruit for a topic that all their representatives should be versed on. So that would be thing two. And then I'd say thing three would be casualty affairs. They need to know about it as well, so that there's, I guess, layered defenses to make sure that the survivor knows about this and is thinking about it early enough to make a difference and avoid getting sniped by some insurance salesman.
Yes, especially it's unfortunate, but some service members that are killed in the line of duty, it's very public. Once
Yeah,
this family has been notified, then their name goes out everywhere and their location. So where they're stationed. So I mean, people are able to hone in on you real quick, which is a little crazy because it would just take a very simple Facebook search to the location and in the post Facebook groups, those type of things. So people are able to, especially the predatory people, find you very quickly, which is just turns my stomach. But unfortunately, I know that is what happens.
yeah.
Somebody that, receives this money, they're a survivor, most likely a family member. When should they make financial decisions? I mean, some of them might be very short term, like bring family in, you need help, those type of things. But is there some type of hierarchy that you recommend to people?
Yeah, so I think your first question, good advice, it would usually be try to wait 6 to 12 months after a really big loss to make major financial decisions. And it may be longer. There is a time component to the HARD Act contribution. Like that's got to be within 1 year of the receipt of the payout. And so, I encountered this with one family where there was a 10-month delay between the loss and when they came to me, which meant that we had 2 months to get her
Yeah.
done. And that's tough because there was still a lot of grief going on. Um, if someone hasn't sat around pondering, like, I wonder if there's a way to supercharge my Roth IRA, the time to dive into that topic is probably not a few months after their spouse passed. It's probably going to take a while to really get comfort with why we would consider doing a big thing like that. And if we're up against a clock, that's a bad time to have to face that. Anyway, I do think that trying to delay, but then there are going to be some issues that are time sensitive, and so you do your best with that. I think your second question was like kind of hierarchy of things to consider triaging with that money. I mean, that's going to be very individualized to what's going on in that person's world. But I would want to start with like, okay, what are the goals? What vision did you have with, whether it's spouse or whoever?
Most likely spouse. We'll just say the majority here probably
Yeah,
spouse, but
yeah, yeah. But I think uh, trying to get through, okay, what were your goals together as you get through your grieving process? What do you feel like your goals are now? 500 to $600,000 sounds like a lot, but with the prices of housing, like it doesn't actually go all that far if you wanted to say pay off a house or something like that. And most people, frankly, when they have a windfall like that, they're going to want to spend a little bit of it on some self-care and whatnot. And so I think there's a level of yes, probably do that and enjoy it, but then moderate it. But yeah, I think the hierarchy is really going to depend on the specifics of that situation. I think the most important thing would just be keep your foot on the brakes until you're sure it's time to put it on the gas.
yes. Can you tell us again what the total benefit that they receive is? Like how many is that? How many sessions is that?
Yeah. In my experience, most of the folks I've worked with, we run out of the 2 years of time before we run out of the 40 hours. And so that effectively means that you probably can work with an advisor for 2 years and you don't pay a dime. The advisor bills the comp sci company, like that's all in the background. And then, if you want to continue a relationship after that, then it's up to, the advisor if they can take you on as a client and negotiating fees and things like that. But generally, the 2 year clock is going to run out before the 40 hours. And part of that is that, in my experience, the complexity of survivors' needs is not enormous. There's an educational component, there's a triaging component, but because we don't necessarily have enormous complexity to deal with, we're not probably doing hours and hours of analysis on scenarios and things like that. We're guiding, we're educating. Yes, we're doing those long range projections, but if the family didn't already have, say, tons of real estate and businesses and all those things, there's just not so many moving parts that it runs the clock, which is great because then, I think that longer that relationship is, the better we can really formulate what the best outcomes and recommendations will be and posture the survivor to have the best outcomes financially.
Can't imagine that it's easy to get people to have those discussions because that is a death. So you've had this whole plan, like your goals, you've talked about, probably for some people years, decades, and then all of a sudden now that's gone. So I would imagine that you can't really sometimes go into deep, long discussions for very long before it, so that probably could drag out the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some of that is I find that everyone, whether they're a grieving survivor or otherwise, has a time of useful consciousness for financial discussions, and so that tends to center closer to an hour than say 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element too of like you schedule time with a professional. If there's an hour on the calendar, you stick pretty close to an hour. So between that and that kind of time of useful consciousness factor, I think that the time doesn't end up being the problem. It's really more of, are we helping this person come to terms with their financial reality, the opportunities that they may have, and helping them get to a sense of peace of mind about their money. And doing it in a way that, again, is because there's that fiduciary standard, their best interests at all times. Every financial relationship has conflicts of interest, but this one's a pretty low conflict of interest because the advisor knows from the start, like the most you could make is $8,000 because the hourly rate that they pay is 200 an hour. If you normally bill more than that, you're not going to make that. And I guess a really unseemly advisor could try to do the 40 hours as fast as possible without getting much done. I can't imagine that happens very frequently because the people that do this are usually agreeing to do the program at far below their hourly rate. So they're already doing it for kind of a bit more of an altruistic, not quite pro bono reason in the first place. So yeah, I do think that the bigger issue is just meeting that person where they're at, helping them through their grief. Most advisors are not trained grief counselors, so you're in a space that you got to navigate carefully and has its challenges, but certainly very rewarding too.
Yes. You touched on it earlier, but can you explain again why it's better to use this program? Obviously free. That's, I think, really great. But, to take advantage of it, if somebody's like, obviously has a lot going on, a lot of mental bandwidth has been taken up. If they're looking at this, like, because unfortunately, sometimes when people see it's related to the government anyway, they're like, oh, I don't know if that's going to be any
Yeah.
good. But what would be the benefit of them taking advantage of this benefit?
Yeah. I mean, so setting cost aside, I do think that when you look across the space of financial services professionals, I take a pretty dim view to people who mix advice and sales of products, whether it's annuities or insurance policies, things of that nature, just because the conflicts of interest are unreconcilable in my book. And people can talk themselves in circles about how they do it. I'm not going to buy it. So I think just the idea that you'd be working with someone whose fee model is totally transparent, really not the type of thing that is going to make them the wealthiest advisor in the world, means that you're already working with someone who wants to be there because they want to help you and they're getting a modest amount of compensation compared to what they might do in other engagements, but they're there, I think, for probably closer to the right reasons than someone who might be trying to sell products and get commissions. I think there's a component too of someone, like not all advisors have an hourly service offering. You know, when we register with our state or with the SEC, we have to list out our services and how we do our services. There's just regulatory compliance junk that we have to go through that results in a lot of people saying, I'm not doing hourly. That's like not going to be a profit center for me. So someone who does have hourly on their service offering, there's a recognition by that person that, hey, if I'm doing this, I'm doing it because I want to help the client more than I want to help myself, in terms of that engagement is not going to be the most profitable way to spend your time. So again, you're funneling towards the type of people who do this are people who I'd say their heart is in the right place for why they're in the financial services industry in the first place. Person that the CompSci reaches out to is an MFAA advisor or necessarily has a military background. So there could be an element to, maybe you're talking to someone who isn't a FLA fiduciary but knows all the military stuff, front and back, and is just a more comfortable connection. I could see someone wanting that from time to time over someone who is, hourly fiduciary, but not all that familiar with military benefits or just the military experience and loss and things of that nature. So I think that funneling towards a fiduciary who's in there for the right reasons and it's probably not terribly profit driven is a great reason to consider that kind of professional.
That's really great. Do you know if you get assigned to someone and it's not a good fit, can you say that and they'll assign you
Mhm.
another advisor?
Yeah.
Okay, because I would like to also point out what's very confusing about the title of this. It's the VA's Beneficiary Financial Counseling Service. So that doesn't make one think you're going to get a financial advisor. So it's very confusing because they would think, okay, well, maybe this is like to help me get out of debt. But no, you're actually getting free financial planning with this service. So I do think they should consider renaming it. And the question of how could they fix it, or
Yeah.
how would you redo this? If I could redo it, I would start with the name right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I very much agree. It's the whole thing needs a makeover.
Yes. Okay, to sum it all up, why should the military community care more about this and pay more attention to it?
Yeah. I mean, there's the phrase, and I hope I won't mangle it here, but all gave some and some gave all. And if we are still a nation who believes in its values and defending the weak and taking care of, widows, orphans, the disadvantaged, if those are still the things that we hold true as Americans, and then as service members, we take care of our own. We saw, very recently, just an amazing show of the ethos that we do not leave anyone behind. I mean, I think the U.S. probably spent $1 billion to rescue that guy in Iran.
And every
So
service member is like, "Oh, yes, that's
yeah,
how it should be."
yeah. Like I cannot wait to see the movie version of that. But
Right.
you think to really impactful movies about the mismanagement of this. I think about like the We Were Soldiers book about Hal Moore and Vietnam,
Yeah.
and just how his wife recognized how poorly the notifications were going. Like how can we mangle the process of taking care of someone who so obviously needs our care, and we so obviously have the duty to do this and do it right? How do we mangle that? Like that to me is where the impetus to do this right comes from. Our survivors, especially the spouses, are at their lowest point, and we should be doing everything as a government and as a society to stand by them. And if there's a free benefit that's a really good one, boy, man, we got to do it right to connect them with that. We don't cram it down their throats, but we want to make sure that they know about it. They know about it enough times to have it sink in at the right time. And yeah, we owe it to them to do it right. I just don't know that there's a lot of higher callings on this one.
Yes, I will say for everybody listening, I take absolute solace that you as a human and individual are doing this work, because there are some unfortunate people that take advantage of survivors. I mean, just take advantage of service members in general, but there's survivors. I mean, just is absolutely despicable that, in that moment somebody would take advantage. So it's a good feeling to know good people are doing this work. So I appreciate everything that you're doing and making people more aware of that this is a benefit and one that should be taken full advantage of for someone, especially when the clock is ticking. That's what's even scarier, is that if you don't find out about it a year later, and like you said, with the Heart Act, have to do some things within the year, I think is really important. So, okay, well, I am definitely have some thoughts about how I can help spread the word on this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You've
there
got a
will,
good megaphone.
yes,
So
but I will definitely put links in the show notes for everybody to go check out their website and share it. And it's just, I think education is part of the, hopefully no one ever needs this. But in the moment that, I think it's really important for people to know that this is a thing. And even if you don't necessarily personally need it, you have a friend that's a military spouse that loses their spouse, you're able to say, hey, I know this is a service that, you might need. So show notes, everybody can check that out. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick random questions I ask everybody. First off,
or
what
real
is,
quick, just one quick plug on that last, just while we're on this
yeah,
topic, for
yeah.
all the folks listening, please go in and update your beneficiaries on your SGLI. That's done through MilConnect, and then go and update your beneficiary for the, again, abominably named death gratuity. Typically in the Air Force system, that's done, I think, through like MyPERS or something. So the other services is probably different, but it's the old form DD93 emergency record of data. That's where you set that the beneficiary for the death gratuity. And it's, not that uncommon, especially for younger service members, that they came in to the service, they weren't married, they left their family on there, they didn't update it. Their parents get the money, and there's no compulsion to get that money to the spouse who probably deserves it. So if you're still listening to the podcast at this point, boy, howdy, go update those things and find anyone that you can, grab by the hair and make them do the same.
Yes, and to tack on to such a good point, I'm so glad you said that, to point out that you're updating two separate things. So that's important
Hmm.
for people to understand. But also for young service members, I guess, or older ones that maybe have had a child. You're
Yeah.
not married, but now you have a child. You might be, 18 years old, but now you have a child. So making sure that's going to the right person, I think is really important. I've seen that happen. You hope adults will do the right thing, but you just don't know. So yes, what a great way to end that. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right.
Okay.
Now, quick random question: what is one resource or tool that makes your life or your work easier?
Ooh, goodness. I'll give you an obscure one here. There is a plugin for Outlook that I use called Boomerang. And Boomerang it solved this problem that I'd had for a million years, which was I want my inbox reasonably clean, but I don't want to forget to take action on something, and I want a reminder of it. And Boomerang is basically a one-click plugin that you can just say, hey, bring this email back to me in, tomorrow or in 4 hours or in 2 weeks or a month, or you could set a specific reminder, gets it out of your inbox, but boomerangs it back to your inbox at a point of your choosing. And I feel like ever since I found that thing a few years ago, very few leakers get to the target, because I don't like shove an email out of sight, out of mind when I actually need to flight follow what's going on with the topic. Boomerang actually does make my life quite a bit easier, and it's pretty cheap.
I always forget about that, and I really do need that because I get a lot of emails, and sometimes just like I want to get to that, but then that's how things get buried.
Yeah.
And I really am trying to be so much better about email, getting back to people in a timely manner. Not that, like, I recently, and I feel sick about it, sent somebody an email that got buried, and it was like 6 months ago. And I
Hmm.
was like, I'm really sorry, but it wasn't like a huge pressing thing. But anyway, just totally disrespectful. So somebody I know that I didn't get back to in 6 months. So I'm really sorry. So that I think you meant that one specifically for me, Brian.
No, 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 no,
I'm
no.
just
I mean,
joking.
No, huh? Well, especially after what I did to your calendar, 2 weeks, a week or 2 weeks ago. Like, no, 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 no. Drinks on me for that. But yeah, I mean, we're all buried in email. I mean, it's if you're a knowledge worker, you are buried in email. And I know some people are just like whatever, leave them all in there and let God sort it out. I'm not an inbox zero person, but I'm an like I can manage 20-ish emails that I need action within the week in my inbox. But after that, get those boogers out of there because it's too much and I can't sort it. And I get overwhelmed by it. But Boomerang is really great for, hey, I know this needs action in the future, but get it off my desk for now, but bring it back at the right time. So yeah.
Yes. I also use archive a lot. Like I'm going to need this in the future, so I'm trying to put them in buckets like, but I need to bring the boomerang bucket back. So, okay, I will put a link for that everybody. Now, what is your favorite book right now or your favorite book of all time? Have you read
Oh,
something recently that you're enjoying?
let's see. Read, I think it's Oliver Berkman's 4,000 Weeks, and then he's got a follow-on book that's like Meditations for Mortals, and it's really like as a I'm a admitted self-improvement and time management junkie, and yet it's a he does a really good job of pointing out some of the futility of that and just some really great reminders for living in the moment and just the impossibility of getting it all done and it kind of puts you at ease. Plus, he's got, he's British, so he sounds smart and witty and charming, and his voice is really easy to listen to. So yeah, Oliver Berkman's 4,000 Weeks. I think it's Time Management for Mortals, and then there's a follow-on book that's like a daily meditation for a month on those topics. I thought that was an excellent book.
Yes, I'll
Yeah.
be sure
If I get
to put a go
if I
ahead.
get one more, I'm currently reading Scott Galloway's Notes on Being a Man, and I love all his stuff, and I'm a girl dad, but I do think that the parents of young men have immense challenges in the this part of the 21st century, and I think he's just got such a great optic on what masculinity is and what right looks like for young men. So I really like his book too.
That's good to hear because I actually, as the mother of two sons, bought that book.
Yeah,
So I have not read it, but
cool.
I have it on my coffee table in hopes that some people will read it. But that's good to know that you're enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm also finally comfortable with saying that audiobooks are reading too, and so I no longer be like, well, I read or I listened to it. Like, whatever, I read it. It's an
Yes,
audiobook.
yeah,
It's a
yes,
book.
yes, it's a book.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you now have the knowledge. That's what's
yes,
most important. So,
yes.
okay, well, I'll be sure to put a link to that one in the show notes for everybody too. Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast. And today, in honor of your visit, I thought we'd do something related to you. So, we are doing fighter pilot fact or fiction.
Okay.
So, it's going to show my complete ignorance of fighter pilots. But I'm going to give you five statements, and you have to tell me if they are fact or they are fiction. If you get three out of the five correct, you get bragging rights, Brian, that you won. Game time on the MILMO Show.
Alrighty.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Fighter pilots can pass out during flight because of G forces. Is that fact or fiction?
That is fact.
That is. I know this may be a really silly question, but like, how long does that last? Can it last a really long time, or do you like naturally come to?
Oh,
Because I did
boy.
see Maverick.
Yeah. So yeah, Maverick actually like compared to the first one, Maverick like really so much better in terms of like
Reality.
reality, yeah. Yeah, so it's called G-lock, G-induced loss of consciousness. And it essentially what happens is that the centripetal force of being on in a turn that causes blood to pool in the lower extremities of your body, which is not in your brain where it needs to be for you to stay conscious. And so one of the things you learn early on in pilot training is how to manage that as best you can. Most humans reasonably fit humans can stand up to 9 Gs without losing consciousness, but some people are going to G lock at much lower um, G forces. And like, how long are they going to be out? And typically out for, call it maybe 10 to 30 seconds, probably also in a impaired state for additional chunks of 30 seconds to even minutes afterwards, which is why it's a known killer in terms of, people, or if their nose is pointed down and they got the afterburner stroked up, it's really your chance of surviving not great. However, just not too many years ago, they started installing basically an auto ground collision avoidance system in a lot of the modern fighters. And that thing, once they enabled that, started saving lives like that because whether it was some other spatial disorientation or G-lock controlled flight into terrain, it has been a killer for lots of years. But that new capability has saved lives like almost instantaneously as soon as they started enabling it. So
It's really awesome. And it shows your knowledge because you have already answered my second
all
question.
17 of the other questions, I
So
win.
we'll just go through these. So number two, fighter pilots always feel the full G forces equally throughout their entire body. Is that fact or fiction?
I'm gonna say that if it's not fiction, it's a little bit of a misstatement. So like I think where this one is, I'm gonna go ahead and say incorrect fact, gusting towards fiction. If I can
It's
give that as
fiction.
an
It's
answer, okay.
fiction. But you
All
said
right.
that it pulls in your lower extremities.
Yeah, so the blood is going to pool naturally in your lower extremities, and the thing that you're going to do is essentially tighten the muscles from your major muscle groups from your calves to your thighs to your core, while simultaneously um, taking a deep breath before the onset of G's and then exchanging air at an approximately 3 second cadence. I don't know, maybe they changed it since I became a washed up version of a fighter pilot. You're going to do what is called an anti-G straining maneuver, which the abbreviation for that, because everything has to have a good abbreviation, is AGASM. So you're going to do an AGASM to manage this exchange of air while simultaneously straining. So the straining helps prevent the pooling of blood, and then the air management helps keep your lungs from collapsing under the pressure of the weight. Because you can imagine, 200-pound person at 9 Gs is 1,800 pounds of weight on parts of their body. It's not your normal daily existence.
Yeah. I can't wait to read you my third quote. So you got two for two.
Woohoo!
Number three question is, and I want to go ahead and give you this one because you've already answered it. So I just want to tell you pilots have to perform a specific breathing and muscle technique to stay conscious under high G's. Is that fact or fiction? And the answer is straining maneuver.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 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 The old agasm.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so you get that one. Number four, fighter jets can fly upside down for extended periods of time. Is that fact or fiction? And I don't know, I
Uh,
guess if you want to say modern ones, I don't know if that's a
yeah.
preference.
So I think this one pivots on what is extended, uh, and because it ties into this whole thing, um, and it also depends on the jet. So some can, but extended becomes problematic, and the main reason would be that fuel systems, among other systems, are often gravity fed, and they're based on the idea of flying upright. And so if the fuel is not getting the normal force of gravity to feed through the system, then you can have cavitation of fuel pumps or just starvation of the motor. And so almost like certainly every aircraft I ever flew had a 0 or -G time limitation because the thing going on with that is you're moving fuel away from its normal process, which is eventually going to cause motor problems. So if we really mean extended, sort of like indefinite, yeah, I don't think any of the fighters can do inverted flight, which involves a -G environment for an extended amount of time. But some level of time, yeah, the modern fighters can do it, but it is a very problematic thing for most aircraft to do, just based on primarily fuel systems.
Yes, you definitely get that one because it says like some of the time, not the whole time. So,
Okay. All right.
okay, last one. Fighter pilots train in simulators that can fully replicate combat scenarios. Is that fact or fiction?
I'm going to go with a hard fiction on that one, just because fully is awfully encompassing. They've gotten way better than they used to be, but just going back to this whole feeling of G's, even simulators that have a little bit of motion to them don't actually simultaneously replicate the G's. Like when we go to the G training at the centrifuge, that is a very, very basic simulator just to give you something to do while you're experiencing G's. Simulators that are training you on mission systems and tactics and things like that, those don't have any motion, at least not in the F-35 or being our most up-to-date jet. And so there's also limitations to like when we do high G training that involves both the aircraft mission systems and actually flying with Gs. We just can't replicate those Gs. So yeah, I would scoff that one as fiction just based on the use the word fully.
Yes, yes. You definitely get bragging rights that you won game time and predicting all the, like, you named, you could answer them all. So I appreciate you playing the game and being
It's
on this
fun.
show. Can you tell everybody listening where they can learn more about you and the work you're doing?
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, so my firm is called Winged Wealth Management and Financial Planning, and we're at wingedwealth.com. I post blog stuff both on my firm website as well as my firm Facebook as well as LinkedIn. And then I also have a Facebook group called Fighter Pilot Finance that people are welcome to reach out and look into joining, where I just put out educational content in there. My firm is more or less kind of been at a waitlist capacity for a good bit now. So I'll talk to folks that are looking for advisors, but I'm referring out most new business these days while I try to build capacity.
I love that. Yes, I would say definitely check out all of your content, especially on like LinkedIn. I see it a lot. So really great stuff. So you can't if you can't become a client, you could definitely still get the benefit of your knowledge.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you so much. I will be sure to link to all of those in the show notes for everybody. I appreciate it, Brian.